in comments. Let's start with those. We'll handle them and then we'll move on to the other caller.
Certainly, Chairman. I received an email from a Mr. John Burry, Kenilworth, New Jersey. His comments are verbatim as: the censoring of a paragraph of my comments at the 10/7/21 Commissioner meeting was an un-American, as the term used to mean, infringement of free speech that would not be out of place in a fascist dictatorship. The rationale for reading it, according to your bylaws: no speaker shall make any inflammatory personal comments or attacks, threats, or engage in the use of vulgar comments or profanity. Inflammatory is a purely subjective term. Someone praising your competence could be considered inflammatory to someone who knows better. This wording in your bylaws would have shut up Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. most times. And I note that we are all people. This is essentially precludes all speech subject to your whims. I also note that the words in the paragraph censored at the last meeting were not mine, but those of a commenter on the County Watcher's blog that I essentially agreed with. Here are my impressions of the operation of this board over the last 15 years, which incidentally would apply to several other governing bodies I have seen in action. Where party bosses do not have to concern themselves with winning elections, they are free to choose candidates based primarily on loyalty. This they have tried to do in Union County and on the whole succeeded. You vote unanimously for everything they tell you to, from DiFilippo to Green to Scutari. The few instances when there was doubt, Angel Estrada and Mohammed Jallo on development directions comes to mind, were token nays and served no practical purpose. This leads to destitute of critical thinking and rewards sloth. That leads to costly and ridiculous projects like the solar panel scheme that Dakota's lawyers sold this board 10 years ago. And as I predicted then, has and is still costing taxpayers tens of $millions a day. John Burry, 10/21/21.
All right, I'm going to call on the county council to add any kind of response to that. Mr. Bergen, can you comment, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, the clerk did not read one paragraph out of Mr. Burry's remarks last week, 2 weeks ago at the meeting, and that was based on my legal advice. Mr. Burry is correct that the language he quoted is from the bylaws of this board, which have been adopted unchanged for at least 6 or 8 years. And they do bar the type of speech that he noted, inflammatory personal comments or attacks. That rule has been applied equally at in-person meetings over the course, too frequently, but occasionally. And I would once again renew my opinion that there was no infringement on anyone's free speech. This was an appropriate action by the chair and the clerk to control the meeting. Therefore, I do disagree with Mr. Burry once again that his rights were infringed. Again, the correct and clean order of this body is something that the chair can protect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bergen, thank you. That seems very clear to me. Let's move on to the second comment.